Hey, Runs. So today I am going to talk to Cameron Zohoori from the documentary. I love the title, by the way. Odd Hours, No Pay, Cool Hat, and it's about something that I kind of knew about, but not really knew about. Volunteer firefighters. And really quick, in 1991, I remember seeing the movie Backdraft. I went to the theaters with my friends. I was 16 years old. Walking out the theater, I was like, man, I would love to be a firefighter.
Mhm.
I was too young because I was 16, so I couldn't apply. I finally, when I turned 18, I took the test, and I didn't do so well, so I didn't actually become a firefighter. But it was always one of those things that I wonder what would happen. And then now seeing this, um, people can volunteer. So, Cameron, let us know, like, how did I guess, find a subject to make a documentary about? And then, like, how did you get these different locations to say, okay, yeah, you could come over here and film us?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you, volunteer firefighting was not something I knew much about, or any of the folks working on the film really knew much about going into it. I'd certainly heard of volunteer firefighters, but I didn't really understand what that meant. And in this case, this topic actually kind of came to us. So Gary Matoso, the co-director, and myself, we worked together for years. But this one, Peter Yoakum, who's the executive producer of the film, was the one who initially had this idea that someone should make a film about volunteer firefighters. He was looking for a story that was, unifying, uplifting in some way, but he also had traveled around and talked to a lot of volunteer fire chiefs and knew that there was a real problem with recruitment, that they were having a lot of trouble recruiting new volunteers across the country. And at the same time, the number of calls that they were getting was going up. So there was a real need for recruitment and public awareness. But on top of that, you've just got great stories to tell, clearly. So, it's 700,000 volunteers across the country. It's, three-quarters of all firefighters in the country are volunteers. So there have been a lot of those stories about firefighters, over the years and in recent years, but not really about volunteers, even though they make up such a huge proportion of it. So we were excited about the story, about the impact goals, but also just about those individual stories to tell.
Mhm.
So we just started learning a lot about it, and starting the pre-production process, getting a sense of what was out there. The landscape of the fire service across the country is really different in different places.
Yeah, yeah.
What volunteers are doing in different places is really different. So we had a lot to learn, and just kind of get our heads around that. And then with Louise Collette, who's our casting director, she kind of led the charge of actually starting to get ideas for stories from across the country. So we put out a call for stories through the National Volunteer Fire Council and some other sources, and ended up getting around 800 submissions in just the first couple of weeks. So it was kind of overwhelming, just kind of taking in all of these stories from people, again, doing really different things. It's not just fire, it's EMS,
Yeah.
it's rescue, it's all kinds of, problem solvers is what they call themselves. So then we had to narrow it down. And so that was kind of the challenge, was taking all of that and deciding what do we focus on for this film? Who do we focus on?
Yeah, because I mean, there you meet a lot of, I guess you could say, interesting individuals in this. Like the Hernandez family. I mean, their story is very powerful. There was Yitzi, who I fell in love with because his determination
Oh
to
yeah.
become a firefighter. And then, I mean, can you let us know a little bit about those two? Like, how did
Yeah.
you? I guess you kind of did say how you found them, but like, what drew you to their stories?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the case of Jaime Hernandez, who you mentioned, in the Hernandez family in Beeville, Texas. So Jaime had submitted this story, and we just heard about kind of the family ties. It really is a multi-generational story for them, which you hear a lot in the fire service. There are lots of these, it's a tradition in a family often, where it's, a grandfather and the father and the kids, or sometimes the mother, and there's a lot more women in the fire service than ever before. But that has been so common, throughout history, I think, and in over the last decades. But that's changing. In a lot of cases, the younger generations aren't stepping up in the same way, or they're leaving their small towns. So this was, in the case of the Hernandez family, it was great because we were seeing kind of that story beginning. Like, Jaime was the first firefighter in his family. They live in a small town, Beeville, Texas, and he had just started volunteering as a young man. And now his two sons are getting involved, and his grandson is a huge fan of, the 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid is a huge fan of all things fire and knows all the
Mm.
trucks by heart. And So it was really just this family story where we were able to kind of see that tradition starting in a family, and how important that was to them as a family and their personal bonds, the sense of legacy of kind of doing things together just in that tight knit family unit. So they were just a wonderful family to spend time with and to film with.
Uh-huh. I
But
like at
that
the end
was
how like
good.
you see them like playing, like he's playing with his son and like they're like pretending they're going through a fire. And I think
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. It's a cool way to play and also like kind of teach them of what to do in case there ever is a fire. No, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, 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 not at all. Yeah, and that's what, that is just how they spend their time. And that's the thing with the volunteer fire service, is it becomes really enmeshed in your life pretty quickly, I think, once you start doing it. And the fire family aspect of it was something that we encountered time and time again, where you just develop such close bonds with those other people that you're working with to go out and help your neighbors, help people who are in need, like in really intense circumstances, and that forms those bonds really quickly. So it becomes this like second family,
Yeah,
and that was true for the Hernandez family for sure, and the young men there. And then you mentioned Yitzi and the Muncie story,
yeah.
which that was definitely one that when the little seed of it first came through in a message that we got, we just our ears perked up. We're like, what is this? That sounds fascinating. So this is the story of Muncie, New York, which is a 95% ultra Orthodox Jewish community, and the fire department really didn't reflect that. They were, an old fire department with a long tradition of firefighting, but because the ultra Orthodox members of the community, the men, don't shave their beards,
Yeah.
they couldn't be trained as firefighters because you have to be able to get that seal with the mask. So the story we were telling was actually of Yitzi, who was the first Hasidic ultra Orthodox member of the fire station. They realized that they needed to do something about this. That they couldn't just be ignoring the vast majority of their community,
Right.
including people who wanted to help. And Yitzi was just, yeah, he was determined. Like you said, he was knocking on the door. He was just hanging out at the fire department, would not take no for an answer. And they figured out how to make it work. They figured out how to introduce a program where he could become a firefighter and do everything. Again, this is one of the realizations we had making this film, is that firefighting, 99% of it is not fighting fires. It's everything else that leads up to that moment of going into a burning building. It's, all the stuff to get the trucks ready, all the training that goes into it. It's, the ladders, it's getting people there, it's logistics, and then it's publicity, it's PR, it's
Yeah.
photography, it's IT, it's all these things. So that idea was really important in the film, that there is something that everyone can contribute to this, that it is a community effort.
Mhm.
And Yetzi's story really demonstrated that, because it was such an interesting, the specifics of the story were so interesting, like the cultural, dynamics there, and what they had to figure out were so interesting, but it really also spoke to a lot of other situations and departments across the country in terms of how do you integrate your whole community into this effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really fun one. And Yitzi was amazing to work with. That whole department was a lot of fun to visit, just because again, it was one that totally unexpected for us, and immediately we knew there was something there that we wanted to explore.
Yeah, I mean, because that's one of the things. I mean, you always like want to see yourself in that role, and then for all these like younger kids in that area that could see, and all the other firemen that look like them, they could say to themselves, "I could do this," when I get older. So I thought that was like brilliant. Was there any like I don't want to say pushback? Was there any like I guess you could say moments or people that didn't want to be filmed or thought like maybe this is too personal to put on here? That you guys came across with?
Very little, surprisingly, because certainly that does happen when you're making films. I mean, in the case of the Muncie story, that was one where we had to have a level of care going into it,
Mhm.
because that ultra Orthodox community has been, depicted on film in different ways in recent years. There've been some not so positive depictions, and so we wanted to make sure that they were really comfortable with us coming in there. But everyone, we just take it slow and build the relationships over time, and everyone really understood what the purpose of this film was, and just kind of taking it step by step. everyone was really happy to open up, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, like you said, they're sharing really personal things,
Mhm.
personal stories, their own backstories, and letting us into their homes to film is not an easy thing to do. But I think, I think with the volunteer firefighters are very humble. They weren't necessarily eager to be movie stars, but they're also very proud of what they do, proud of the fact that they volunteer, and
Mhm.
they I think they all felt like these stories hadn't been shared, that people don't understand what they do, even in their own communities sometimes. We were in a community of 500 people, and they told us, like, people don't know, even here in this community of 500, that they're served by volunteers. Like, there really is this lack of awareness. So I think they were really happy to have these stories getting out there, even if sometimes it meant, they had to be in that vulnerable place and share. Luckily for us, yeah, they were very willing to do it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I like how you said like they like in documentary you show like the training process with the recruits in Washington, like their whole 12 week, and like you jump back to that. Is was there like did you, because I saw like you had to put the whole, I guess, the outfit on, or within a minute. Did you or ever try to do that, like put the suit on yourself, or?
We suited up once or twice. We were nowhere near a minute, but we managed to get it on. But yeah, it's pretty. That's one of my favorite scenes. That some of those training scenes are really funny.
Uh,
Just watching people, yeah, kind of face the reality of what this is for the first time. Like, it's a great idea to be a firefighter, but then when you actually have to do it, it's pretty challenging.
yeah, because I mean, it seems um, insane to put all that on within a minute, but as you watch them, I mean, little by little, they're getting it, and
Yeah,
it's because like they said, like the time is of the essence with this, because you gotta
right.
get ready and get out there.
Yeah.
But no, I thought it was great just seeing all of that. You filmed like throughout. I've seen a lot of these like places were like mainly like in, I guess, like in rural areas, and then like
Mm,
with the New York area.
right.
How did this all come about? I mean, like how many? I guess how much time did you spend in each place, or was this all done like continuously, or like at one time, traveling back and forth, or?
It was most of them we would do in a continuous sort of production period of just, of under a week, like 4 or 5 days in each of those locations in terms of actual filming.
Mhm.
Um, there was a lot of, pre-production work leading up to that, where we were talking to those people, developing the stories, developing the relationships, and understanding it. But in most cases, it was just a fairly short, dedicated period of time that we were spending with them. In addition to, getting all of that archival content, things from their backstories, ways to kind of explain the story further. And then, as you mentioned, with the training story, that was the one where we did really return to it over time, because we wanted to see that transformation of these kind of fresh recruits, and what did it look like from the beginning to the end of that process, and what were they going through, and how did they come out the other side. But it was a fairly tight production for a documentary. I mean, documentaries obviously can take years to make sometimes. In this case, we knew we wanted a concept that would let us shoot it, fairly compactly and
Mhm.
concisely, so that we could get it out there quickly, because it did have these impact goals that are really, urgent and important. So we didn't want to spend years following different characters, as fun as that would have been to see those transformations.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. Like before this interview, like I was looking online, and it seems like every movie about like firefighters is always just about like the firehouse. It's never really much about the volunteering. So how you were saying the impact goals, what do you hope people get out of this, like watching this documentary?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The impact goals were really front and center from the beginning. Like, that was embedded in how we chose these different stories, and how we filmed them, and how we edited it. And showing that the human side of it, the fact that these are, everyday people like you and me. They're everything from 16-year-olds, sometimes even younger than that. They do have like for explorer programs, or you can get started at 14,
Oh
doing
wow.
first aid and things like that. So everything from, teenagers up to, 73-year-olds who are in their communities doing this, who just choose to give up some free time and energy to do this. So I think that was huge, was just letting people see this as something you can do. and that there are all these different roles that you can play, was really crucial. And now in the actual distribution phase, that's also really important. We're trying to get it out there in a way that, in those communities where it makes a difference, which is, as you mentioned, especially rural communities, smaller towns, but even, close to outlying areas of, metropolitan areas, and especially on the East Coast, there still tend to be a lot of volunteer fire departments, closer than you might think to some of those bigger cities. So we're doing a lot of community screenings. They're arranging hundreds of community screenings at fire departments and community organizations around the country. It's free for them to use, and we have a team that's helping set up those screenings. So any of them can host it, use it as a recruitment tool, and that's really the goal. That is the ultimate goal of this film. So we hope that people see that they can
Right.
step up and do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought one of the stories I thought was funny. I can't remember her name right now, but I remember like she just retired and like drove by just to see, oh, I can, do office work, and he like gives her like the EMT book. He's like, here,
Yeah.
you're gonna be the EMT, and I think that's what's great about this because you probably just want to help out in as as any ways you can, but you're trained to do all these things that you never thought you would, and I mean I think like her post retirement life is a lot more fun now that she's actually doing these things.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's Barbara. Yeah, this is another one of my favorite stories. She's fantastic. And I think that is something that she really, exactly what you said, like how fun that is and how much it brings to her life now. Like and that was what I loved about this story, was it was the impact you're having on the community, but it's also the impact that it has for the individual and how much they grow from this, and how much she's able, she's hanging out with young people every day. She's having them over for pool parties in her backyard, in the summers, and then the alarms go off and they all just go and help someone, like that's, and so it really does bring this richness to the lives of the volunteers. That was something they all talked about. So yeah, it's something that really is just a vital part of making our communities healthier, but also helping ourselves.
Yes, yes. By chance, do you know like what like I guess the percentage of those that are volunteer actually end up becoming like full-time or firefighters?
That's a great question. I don't know the percentage, but it's a fairly common path though, and that is something that we wanted to show. A
Mhm.
lot of times. So Jenna, the story of the firefighter in California who lost her home in a wildfire,
Yeah.
that's kind of the path that she's on. She started as a volunteer and now is making the transition to being a career firefighter. And you get, by volunteering, you get all the same training that paid firefighters are getting. You're getting, amazing training in preparing you for that job. Same for like paramedics and, other medical positions. There are a lot of people who are pre-med, young people who are interested in it, who volunteer to start exploring that world and, see if they like blood, things like that, see if they can handle some of those situations and see how that guides their path. So it really is, yeah, it's great for job preparation and exploration for young people, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I gotta say, Friends. I mean, if you get a chance, it's out right now in select theaters.
Yes.
July 27th, they'll be available like on demand and digitally to watch. It's a great story to see. Like all these stories are amazing. For all of these, like I hate saying the word character because they're real people, but it's like but for I guess as we get to used to watching these, like they're great people, and like everything they do is just amazing, and if you don't think you can do something like that, I mean, you just put yourself in there and you never know. I mean, these people like surprise themselves with some of the stuff that they're able to do. I went to the website and try to see what's around my area for volunteering, and everything is like about 30 to 40 minutes away from me. So I was like, but you never know. But for those that are watching now, there might be someplace closer to you that you can
Yeah.
volunteer. Um, After doing all this, I mean, do you have like any like I guess like desire to like maybe volunteer every now and then, or would you rather stay behind the camera?
I mean, certainly I'd love to keep telling the stories. That's always fun, but it did give me that desire to do this. I mean, spending this time in these departments and with these people, they're amazing people, and that was a big part of it. Was we just wanted to replicate that experience of hanging out with these people and seeing like what that was like. And I'm a little far out from any volunteer departments myself. One of the chiefs, though, in the film told me there's a way we can make it work. Maybe that there's a way to do it. So again, I shouldn't underestimate that myself in what might be possible. But certainly just on a bigger level, we want the film to resonate, even, you know, even if it's not someone who can volunteer in their immediate community at a fire department. There still is, you know, the bigger message of the film is that we create our own communities, we protect our own communities, and there are lots of ways that people can do that and get involved. And it's not, you know, it's about not waiting for someone else to be, you know, the one who's going to go take care of someone in need, right? And so finding ways to do that, and it certainly was inspiring to me in thinking about, are there other ways that I can be stepping up in my community or just my neighbors, you know, to help out.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to end this. I mean, definitely, if you know, if you want to do something for your community, you know, it's up to you to go out there and find these. You know, it doesn't even have to be a firefighter. You know, whatever you can find in your neighborhood to volunteer and help out. But Cameron, thank you very much for your time today. Again, friends, you know, check it out. Again, I love the title, Odd Hours, No Pay, Cool Hat. I mean, what's not to love about that? I mean, everybody always wants to wear a fireman hat, you know. Even as you know, you see so many people on Halloween dressed as firemen, so why
There you
not
go.
do the real thing and volunteer somewhere?
I
Uh,
love it.
but again, thank you very much for your time, Cameron. And yeah, friends, go check out the movie, the documentary. Excuse me. All right,
Thanks,
take
Victor.
care. Bye.
Appreciate it.